Salomon is a mountain brand known for its no-nonsense trail running gear. But ever since techwear decided to touch grass and give rise to gorpcore, Salomon's largest revenue source is now hypebeasts buying trail racing protros to wear casually. So what does it mean for a performance brand when its core intended audience is no longer its most profitable? Will Salomon be able to keep both hardcore and casual customers happy? Or does Salomon have a fashion problem? Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi, and I'm a middle-aged man with a wife, 2 kids, and a dog, and I live in the suburbs, so I try not to swerve into the fashion lane, but sometimes, because of the fact that I am one of the biggest running shoe review channels on YouTube, fashion swerves into me. So here we are. A little while ago, I went to France to go visit Salomon at its global headquarters in Annecy, France. And while I was in France, Salomon also took a bunch of us down to Paris to experience a bit of Art Basel. Now, nominally, the purpose of the trip was so that Salomon could show us some updates coming to the gravel line, both in terms of footwear and apparel for spring and summer 2026. But the thing that I was interested in finding out is, what is Salomon going to be able to do to keep feeding the hype beast without alienating some of its most hardcore, technical, ultra trail runners? And how does Salomon grow from here? Unfortunately, the most relevant stuff to this discussion happened in a room where filming and recording was not allowed, so I'll use some background footage of the stuff they did let us see at the Design Center in Annecy as B-roll. Salomon told us that basically they have 2 types of customers. Customers who define themselves by their outdoor activities. People who call themselves runners or skiers or mountaineers. People whose hobbies have become their identities. Salomon's performance product does really well with these people. And then they also have people who just love Salomon's gorpcore shoes. And for a lot of these people who buy Salomon for the look, the way they identify may have nothing to do with the outdoor activities that Salomon is known for. They might not even be all that active at all. They just like the shoe. And currently, that is Salomon's biggest customer base. But so far, a lot of what Salomon has been making for their newfound sports style customers has either been from the archives or is rebadged current race product. But at some point, they're going to have to make something that isn't derivative. They need new designs that are fashion forward, but are still Salomon. And this is where, I think, gravel comes in. Now, on the one hand, gravel is a very literal concept. It borrows from the cycling world, where they took the freedom of mountain bikes and combined them with the speed of road bikes. Gravel shoes are intended to be run on both road and trail, oftentimes within the same run. And these types of shoes have existed for a long time, and they have a variety of names like crossover shoes, hybrid shoes, road to trail shoes, and even calling them gravel shoes isn't completely new. Craft has been doing this for a couple of years now. But what's really unique here, and the opportunity for Salomon and Salomon's version of gravel here, is that it creates a permission structure. It enables Salomon to speak to a more style-aware consumer, one that they've typically had a harder time reaching in the past, and they could do it without diluting the technical aspects of the core Salomon product. In other words, they're not diluting S-Lab. Instead, they're creating a whole new category of product that enables them and gives them permission to finally design beyond the confines of the archive. We've seen this kind of permission structure before with a brand like Asics and how they use the Nimbus versus the Nimbus Lite. Yes, the Nimbus Lite was technically a lighter version of their flagship shoe, but it was also a safe space to do some experimenting with materials and designs, using new things that hadn't been used before, and dropping some materials that might otherwise seem unheard of from the brand. Even Brooks is using this kind of permission structure to experiment with their shoes using the Max line. The Glycerin Max, for example, is a completely different shoe compared to anything Brooks has ever made before, and it also happens to be my favorite shoe that they've ever made. And what these permission structures do is they allow the brand to experiment, modernize, and bring in new customers that they hadn't been reaching before because it's new enough to be interesting. But it's also separate enough to prevent legacy customers from freaking out. For Salomon, I think the potential for gravel is the most interesting thing that they're working on right now, but I also think it will be separate enough from the hardcore trail product that the grumpy mountain bros won't panic that Salomon has suddenly sold out, watered down, or may have otherwise gone the way of Carhartt. So in theory, I think gravel as a concept is brilliant for Salomon, but in execution, I'm not super excited for SS26. While the shoes are going to be interesting, the gravel apparel looks pretty much like the regular trail apparel that I've been running in. And in a landscape when you're trying to compete with Terex, ACG, and boutiques like Satisfy, next year's gravel's apparel is nice, but it feels like a color update. I mean, I love the color work on what I'm wearing right now, but it's basically the same as what I wore when I went on a multi-day trail running adventure with Salomon in the Rockies back in 2023. But I'm hoping that this disappointment just might be my impatience in what seems like a very slow rollout. Some of the shoes coming later next year are going to be more than just fancy upper on ruggedized road shoes. And things like this gravel vest hint to some more innovative thinking. And so, having met with the Salomon product and design teams, who are all very French and very fashionable, I don't think that Salomon has a fashion problem per se. But given that I was also at the gravel event back in 2024 in Boulder and left with some of the same disconnect between concept and product, I'm starting to wonder if perhaps maybe Salomon has a speed of execution problem. So the concept of gravel, or at least the potential for Salomon's version of gravel, is really exciting for me, as it represents a side of trail running that I think could be more approachable, more inclusive, and also more expressive. Now, there are times where I want the big pack, the quiver for my trekking poles, and I want the S-Lab Erase product. But I don't live in a mountain town, so for the most part, when I'm reaching for a trail shoe, it's because I'm going to be running in my local parks. And so I need trail gear that is functional for me, and I want it to be able to say something. And I really think that Salomon's gravel could be that language.